Hi, it's Louisa Dahl, and welcome to the Interactive Minds podcast, where I talk with passionate marketers, innovators, and digital leaders about their specific recipes for success. In today's show, I interview Ray Blakney, who has started multiple companies in the US and Mexico and applied his marketing methodology to them. Here's 3 things that you're going to learn. 1, the 5-pillar content amplification methodology that Ray uses. 2, why his business was poised to thrive during a global pandemic. And 3, the favourite tools that Ray recommends for keyword and competitive research. Let's get into it. Today I'm here with Ray Blakney, who is a founder and CEO, podcast host, and a skilled marketer, amongst other things. Ray and I were introduced recently through a mutual contact. Welcome to the show, Ray.
Louisa, it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for being here. Now, Ray, you're one of those people who on LinkedIn has several different roles concurrently. Can you summarize for us, what do you do at the moment?
I like to tell people I build 7-figure businesses from home in my pajamas. That's kind of the easiest way of telling people what I do. But otherwise, I actually run multiple companies and I build new ones online. I generally use online marketing, which I've been doing for 14 years now, in order to do it. And I bootstrap these companies. So I don't go out for VC money or any of the rest of it. So I use different marketing techniques depending on the business in order to build up the businesses.
Fantastic. And what businesses are you working on at the moment?
Well, my biggest business is called Live Lingua. It's the 3rd largest online language school in the world. I run a website called Twidgicate, which is a social network for schools, which is actually exploding right now during the COVID pandemic. We have about 200,000 registered users there. I also run a marketing company called the Infinite Upcycle, where we do something called content amplification, which helps us do a lot of our marketing and cover a lot of our bases. For ourselves, I use that. My marketing company markets my own businesses, and we started offering services to clients about a year ago.
Wow. And what's your background? How did you get into these areas?
Sure. My background is actually I was a computer engineer after college. So I did my tour of duty, as I like to say, out in Silicon Valley. Worked over there at some startups for about 2 years. Learned a lot, but it is not a place that's very easy to stay in for a long period of time because it's very high paced. So then I went to do some consulting work. We had the marketing, that was the first bust of the economy back in 2004. So I got offered a full-time job at a Fortune 500 company where I ended up working for another 5 years as a team lead for an IT department. Then I quit and I joined something called the Peace Corps, which is a volunteer organization. And I worked with indigenous communities in southern Mexico for 2 years. Absolutely nothing to do with marketing or computer engineering. And I became an entrepreneur after that. And I've been doing that for I've been building and running businesses now for 12 years.
Fantastic. What a great story, and a range of experience in there, which I'm sure you can draw on in your different companies now. How do you split your time amongst these different enterprises?
It's been a challenge. I'm still working on it. We'll put it to you that way. But a lot of what I've learned is to trust other people. And at the beginning, kind of letting go of ego. Because at the beginning, you always think as an entrepreneur that nobody can do it as well as I can. Then you realize that, of the 8 billion people on this planet, am I really the best at doing all of these things? Probably not. And so you find people who are better than you, which is not as much work as I thought. I'm not as good at doing those things as I initially thought when I was starting out. And then you trust them to do it and you give them leeway and let them run with it. They get the credit, but they get the responsibility at the same time. And it's worked out pretty well. I've never had any major failures on hiring staff. I generally promote internally as well. And I have people who run the day-to-day operations of all these businesses for me now. I kind of just stay on the high level for each one of them.
Fantastic. So what does your team look like amongst these businesses, and are they shared resources?
We definitely share the resources between the teams. They're all running under the same name in the United States. So they're DBAs doing business as, and they're all kind of reporting to the same, for my tax purposes, it's all kind of in the same place.
Yeah.
That does give us a lot of benefit because, again, having a marketing company means I have a whole internally marketing company for 2 of my businesses, and any new business ideas that I launch. I'm launching at least 2 more this year. And that means I'm essentially able to get my marketing at cost because I just expense from one department to the other department. when I meet with the heads of each one of the companies, I actually do team meetings with everybody, even though the companies aren't related. I find that really helps fertilize ideas across companies, because somebody in an education business has a very different perspective than somebody running an agency,
Yeah.
as opposed to somebody running a social network for schools, as opposed to somebody who's helping me on my podcast, for example, right? So having all these people in the same room really is a great place to bring out ideas. I just usually say hello and I shut up for the rest of the meetings, right? Because they're the ones who generate all the great ideas after that. So
Yeah.
that tends to be my management style.
Yeah. Wow. And yeah, I can definitely see the benefit of having that kind of cross-functional team on tap for multiple different businesses there and different thinking. That's fantastic. Now, you mentioned you're going to be launching some new businesses as well. So where have these ideas come from? And are they in similar industries to what you're already doing, or are they in different spaces?
Actually totally different spaces, but related at the same time, I guess would be the best way to put it. Generally, when I launch business ideas, I'm not a visionary entrepreneur in this vein of Steve Jobs, for example, right? I don't see something in the future and invent something that didn't exist. I'm a much simpler entrepreneur. I pretty much see, if I need something, I look for it. And if I don't find it, I build it, is kind of my entrepreneurship methodology. And so the next one I'm building, the name is to be decided, even though we're building the system right now. I just haven't gotten around to building the name, is a search engine that will allow me to search for different podcasts.
Awesome.
That take on guests and then apply to become a guest on them. That doesn't exist. So I tried going to iTunes to try to, find podcasts to appear on.
Yes.
And iTunes has 800,000 podcasts. And it's not broken down by languages. It's not broken down by who does interviews. And there's no contact information. There's no search functionality. You can't search for any of these things. You can't even search for podcasts that are still active, right? You can go to iTunes and you find podcasts that haven't been updated in 2 years. So me and my team, using a combination of technology and humans to do a lot of the work, are going to create a database of podcasts that take interviews. And we're going to update it every month, because people are creating at least a few thousand new podcasts every month. And it's going to be a membership site that you can sign up for. It will be a little higher end, because we don't want to spam podcasters either, right? We're not going to charge $5 a month and have people just email everybody who's out there. And this will give access and save a lot of time for people who legitimately want to appear on podcasts and have a story to sell. And share with their audiences, right? Yeah. So it'll be a little bit of a vetted community. We're working on that. I hope to get the beta out in the next 3 months.
Fantastic.
So that people can start using it.
Excellent. And will that be something that podcasts kind of opt into, or will you just kind of include all podcasts that you can find?
Well, we're going to have the option later for podcasts to actually opt into it as well, but we are going to be looking at Stitcher and iTunes in order to find it. Because a lot of podcasters, we're finding that a lot of podcasters are surprisingly not even that technical. We're finding a lot of podcasters don't have their own websites. They just submit to iTunes.
Yes.
So if we just waited for people to submit to us, most people wouldn't.
Right.
Most podcasters, you go on a server system like Libsyn, and then that just kind of distributes it to everybody else out there, and they forget about it at that point. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to get those people and bring them in. And if they do interviews, and we're going to try to put them in front of the right people, so that people start reaching out to them to appear on their podcast. I know, as somebody who started a podcast early on, sometimes it's hard to find guests once you kind of get out of your own network. And hopefully this will help alleviate some of that as well.
Great. From a marketing perspective, when you're starting a new business like this, do you do much how do you know this is going to work? How do you make sure you've got a good fit for the market?
Sure. Generally speaking, for my business ideas, I do a lot of keyword research. My background in online marketing started in SEO. So I've been doing SEO for 14 years. So I'm pretty heavy on the keyword research side. So I actually go out there and see if people are looking for it.
Awesome.
I used to only base my marketing research on that, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's looking for it. I'm not going to do the business idea. But I have found that there are exceptions to the rules. For example, in this case, with the podcast business, there's two sides to it. One, I know I'm now in a number of circles of entrepreneurs. I speak at conferences, and I've heard other people trying to get on podcasts, right? Business owners who want to share their story, and there's no way to do it. And secondly, I know I need it. So worst case scenario, if this doesn't work, at least it'll be a tool I can use internally.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to go ahead with this one anyway. But generally speaking, for businesses, and when we do it for clients, we go the keyword research route, right? Especially if this is not a big ticket item, you do need a certain amount of volume before the idea is feasible.
Yeah.
And then you check competitors, of course, because a million people in the world can be searching for it. But if you want to be an online bookstore, you're probably not going to beat Amazon, right?
Yeah.
So you need to do more research than just that.
Yeah. Now I've got a bit of a soft spot for startups as well. I quite enjoy that process of getting something to market. What are you doing in terms of like how finished will your product be? Are you going with the MVP to get it live, or what are your thinking? What's your thinking around this?
I'm pre-MVP is generally the way I launch. I can't remember who said it. I think it was one of the founders of Twitter's that said, if you're not embarrassed by the first version of your product, you waited too long.
Yeah.
I love that saying and I live by it. So I am going to launch, as soon as I test it myself and it's good enough, I'm going to launch it and we'll go from there. I see too many people stuck on the whole analysis paralysis or, perfection.
Yeah.
Not launching until something's perfect. I've never had a perfect product in my life. So, using that logic, I never would have launched anything if that was what I'm waiting for. I launch it as soon as it's good enough and then we go from there. But it's generally, I like the more organic launches. So I don't do like a big build up and try to sell 10,000 copies in the first week.
Yeah.
I don't think my methodology would work for that because if 10,000 people bought a half finished product, my reputation would be so bad that it wouldn't actually work from there. But I kind of share it with my networks. And let's say for this one, I'll get 20 people, just with an email blast, I could probably get 20 people to sign up for it. They're my beta group. I'll give them a 50% off at least, with the understanding that, look, there are going to be bugs in there. Let me know what they are. We'll fix them. But I'm going to give you a cheap price, or I might just say, hey, I'll give you lifetime access after a year. Instead of that. And usually that's not a problem, for the beta people. And the ones who like it, they become, the ones who share it with all their friends as well. So I don't even have to sell anymore.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are doing the selling for me.
Great. Well, make sure you keep us posted on when that goes live. We'd love to take a look.
Definitely.
Excellent. Now, today we are going to delve into some of your marketing techniques, and in particular, talking around your business Live Lingua. Now, you were saying to me before that you started this or came up with the idea for this at a previous pandemic stage. Can you talk to us around how this idea came around and what you're doing with the business now?
Sure. So there are three phases to the story. The first one was the Mexican Swine Flu. So the first business that my wife and I started together, she's a Spanish teacher, were brick and mortar language schools in Mexico after I finished my time in the Peace Corps. This was, I believe, 2008-ish. And I only had $2,000 in the bank account. That's what we used to start the business and our living money. So we would actually sleep on the floor of our school on an inflatable mattress that had a small hole in it. So at night we'd be on a mattress. In the morning we'd actually wake up on the floor.
Yeah.
And then we'd roll it up and that would become a classroom for our school. So we were on a very low budget. Luckily, at around that time, I learned about this thing called SEO, search engine optimization. And I started studying and I became pretty good at it. So by the time we launched our school, even the day we opened, we were number one in Mexico. So if you ever looked for a Spanish school in Mexico, learning Spanish in Mexico, we would have come up number one, primarily because none of the other Spanish schools even know that SEO existed. So I was very easily able to beat them. And even to this day, most people think that when you look for something online, if it's number one in Google, it means it's the best, even though it's got absolutely nothing to do with that, right? It's just because somebody's behind the scenes making them rank number one. So the first month we launched, we were fully booked. And, people would pay their deposit. We would run out and buy furniture for the school with the deposit so that by the time they showed up the next week, we actually had furniture in the school.
Yeah.
So things were going pretty well until 4 months into it, Mexican swine flu hit. And for those of you who don't remember that, they thought this was going to be this global pandemic that was going to, wipe out large swaths of the population. So they closed off Mexico to the world. We were 4 months in, no savings or very little savings. And suddenly we had to close our doors, all of our students, except for, ironically, a group of 4 doctors from the United States who thought it was silly, who came down and studied with us. That was it. But they weren't enough to pay the rent.
No.
So we had to find a way to provide for our staff, our teachers. A lot of them were living week to week. Financial planning, unfortunately, is not great in Mexico, and I don't think it's great in many other parts of the world. So you'd pay them on Friday, and by the next Friday, they would have spent all the money. So we needed to find them more work. My wife actually had the idea of why don't we contact our previous students that we've had over the last 4 months and offer them classes via Skype. And I thought, hey, that's a great idea. So we sent them an email, and a lot of them signed up.
Awesome.
So from that, the idea occurred to me, since I'm a computer programmer, not a graphic designer, so my websites look awful, but why don't I just throw up a website and see if anybody else wants this? So we threw up a website like a week into this pandemic, and people started signing up. we had the early mover advantage back then. So there was very few people doing it, but people started signing up. This is great. 3 months down the road, the swine flu pandemic never became anything. So the country opened up and our school was fully booked. But we were already making the same amount of money off of this online school with Skype lessons than we were in our brick and mortar school for 1 hour a day of work, composed to the brick and mortar school where we were working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. It took a little while for things to sink in. So we did that for about 3 years. We were running both businesses, even though our online business fast became much larger than our brick and mortar school. We expanded to 3 different branches of our brick and mortar school until we almost burned out and we decided to sell the brick and mortar school. So we sold that and focused in on the business that was going to become Live Lingua. Back in those days, you would make these micro sites. So we had 11 small sites, one for each one of our languages. Then Google Penguin algorithm update came around and we lost all of our websites overnight. And I had to build them again. So I knew the business idea worked. So I consolidated it and branded it as Live Lingua, and we relaunched. And then we grew to what we are today from that. That was about 6 or 7 years ago. Since then, we won Entrepreneur Magazine Best Small Business in the United States back in 2016, I believe. But we've still run a small ship. This brings us to today with COVID. During this time, I developed a marketing methodology because we've never had millions of dollars behind us. And we can talk later about the exact marketing methodology that we used that helped us kind of cover a lot of bases from social media to SEO. And when COVID came around and everybody moved online, we were perfectly positioned to be found no matter where you looked for language lessons. And our business has gone up 300% in day on day for the last, I think, 4 to 5 weeks.
Wow.
It's essentially, I tell people we've essentially been having Black Friday every day for the last month.
Wow. And how are you coping with that increase in volume from a business perspective?
Yeah, we're doing a lot of hiring.
Yeah.
I mean, my HR lady, she's pretty much doing interviews full-time for teachers. 4 to 5 interviews a day, trying to bring people on. We brought on 3 more customer support people. That's a doubling of our customer support team in order to handle the volume of teachers. The volume of requests for new classes. Luckily, a lot of people are looking for work now. And I've been able to help out some friends who have been furloughed. So they didn't lose their job, but they just don't have it. They don't know how long.
Yeah.
And it works out well for us because we can hire them for the period we need this. We know that this is, this increase is not a change in our SEO or anything like that. So it's not going to last past the COVID. But we can hire these people for that period, help them out. They can help us out. And then when we're done, we can quote unquote let them go, but they want to go anyway because they want to go back to their old jobs.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of positions like that out there where people are just looking for something to pay the bills for the next 3 months, 6 months, maybe a year, and we can help them out with that.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it sounds like a perfect scenario that you've got there to help everyone and to able to scale as you need to as well during this time. So I'm interested around how, I can understand that you're in the right space, I suppose, being online language learning for a whole lot of people to be at home for quite a period of time. But obviously you must have done something to spread the word as well, to get it out there and to be in front of people during this time. What did you do from a marketing perspective in the last couple of weeks that's helped with your growth?
Sure. And the methodology we use is actually, it's not that what we did in the last few weeks, though we have done a few things like up our ad spend. It's more of like a long-term methodology that we've used over the last few years to get us to this position so that when things happened, we were in the right place. So it wasn't that we suddenly did something different as soon as the pandemic happened in order to suddenly appear there.
Okay.
I don't have a magic trick that I'm like, suddenly appear in front of everybody, right? So one of the methodology that we used, and it's what we do at my agency, The Infinite Upcycle, is something called content amplification. So we create amazing pieces of content and we amplify it across the web in order to take advantage of both social media and to take advantage of SEO, but in a cost-effective way and a time-effective way, because we are still essentially a mom-and-pop operation. My wife and I run it, and we're a small team of 8 people full-time, not counting the people we just hired for the pandemic. So we needed some kind of efficient way of covering everything because we don't have the budget to hire a full-time team of SEOs, a full-time person for Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and a content creator on top of that. So content amplification has worked really well for us year on year. We've had 20% growth on traffic every single year. So I think we've had 4 million visits on our website last year. I know compared to Amazon, that's nothing. But for a small business started for $60 out of our, out of our old school,
Yeah.
that's not so bad.
Yeah, definitely. So tell us what specifically you mean by content amplification. Can you maybe give us an example of what a piece of content might do, or how you come up with the content that you're getting out there?
Sure. So the way that we do the content amplification methodology is kind of the same way that we build businesses. And we like to talk about it as having 5 different pillars. So the first pillar of content amplification, the first step is you do the research for the content that you're going to create. That's a combination of keyword research to see if anybody's looking for it, and competitivity research to see whether there's actually a realistic chance of us to rank for this article, right? Again, let's go back to the book example I talked about before. If you only did keywords, you'd type in the word books into whatever keyword tool you use, Google keyword tool, and you'd say, wow, a lot of people look for this. I should write an article on it.
Yeah.
But once you start digging deeper and you take a look at how competitive it is, you'll realize, yeah, I can write an article, but I will never be within the first 100 results and 100 results of Google, let alone on the first page. So it's not worth my time. A third factor we look for in the first pillar is how many backlinks are going to the top 10 results that are ranking in Google, because that can change the scale, because we do email outreach in one of the steps of the pillar in order to build links back to our content. And the number of links back to the top 10 pieces of content is a great indicator of how engaging this content topic is for the reader. Not only is it so good that they're reading it, they're sharing it on their websites, on their blogs. That's how engaging this idea is for them. So we have a formula, and if you go to infiniteupcycle.com, we actually share it in a blog post on how to calculate, kind of combine those 3 things and come up with what we call a content score. So for each piece of content we created at Live Lingua, and we've tweaked that over the years, we run it through this process. We usually do a year worth of planning every January. So our calendar is kind of done out for the entire year. That's step number 1. Step number 2 is obviously the content creation. So we have amazing writers who come in there and they actually do the research. A lot of them are experts on our industry and language learning because they've been with us for years, and they write that content. So it's essentially the best in class. If you can't write something that's the best on the web, don't bother. Just the days of those where you can pay $5 for somebody in another country to write the article for you and just throw it up there and rank are gone. So we spend a lot of time creating this content. Then the amplification starts. The next step we do is we take out of a 2,000, 3,000 word article, we'll take out the quotes, we'll take out different statistics, and our graphic designers will grow and create 10 to 14 different images based on that, which we embed back into the article so the article looks a little more engaging for the reader. But then we resize and amplify those out into social media posts. So we do all the 5 major social media platforms, and we share a total of 44 different posts across the platforms. There's different engagement rates. So on LinkedIn, we wouldn't put 14 posts, right?
Yeah.
We put 1 or 2,
as
opposed to Instagram and Twitter, where you can put 20 or 30 a day. So we kind of do that for the piece of article, for the article. That's the third pillar of what we do. Final one is we do email outreach. Remember, I mentioned that you see who links back to the top 10 articles. We take that a step farther and we find who links back to the first 50 articles in Google. We get their contact information and we reach out to them and show, hey, you expressed interest in something like this in the past. Would you like to link back to us? We get between 0.5% to 1% response rate. On some really good ones, we've gotten up to 3% response rate. So we can actually build links back to our website, and it can even go to the next level. I've been interviewed for Live Lingua, for example, by newspapers in Italy and Chile. I don't speak any Italian. It was a whole Google Translate email interview.
Wow.
But I got newspaper articles out of this methodology. And then the final one is we go back and evaluate all the content that we've created over the last 6 months, and we look for creative ways we can use it. We now have hundreds of articles. So we create ebooks. We've tried it with people reading the articles and putting it up as audios, or maybe making videos with the images and the audios in the back. It sounds complicated, but when you kind of read through the steps, you don't waste any work. And that's what makes it very effective. When we did this over a course of 4 or 5 years, and that's how we got the results that we have. And we are everywhere. When you look at language learning, no matter where you look, no matter which social media platform or SEO, or even YouTube, you will find us. And that's what put us in the position to be found during this pandemic.
And how many articles are you producing, throughout the year or throughout a month?
We do at least once a week. We tried twice a week, but we didn't actually find, for our industry at least, that made a huge difference. for some of our clients, we're finding that actually once, twice a month is good enough for them to actually start getting traction as well.
Yeah. And I guess each industry has a slightly different cadence they're required to get the
Exactly. I mean, it depends on how competitive it is. Language learning has become quite competitive. So once a week, and again, each article has 40 pieces of social media content goes out of it. So we're talking 160 social media posts and everything that go out over the course of any given month for our business. You wouldn't need that. We have a client who sells mannequins to stores. Yeah, he doesn't need that much volume.
Not as much to write about, maybe.
Exactly.
So those 44 pieces of content you mentioned go out each week as well then?
We actually staggered over the course of a month. So for example, if we wrote the article on Monday, we usually release it on Tuesdays, statistically more engagement, right? But let's just say it went out on Monday. We would actually be promoting that article across social media for the course of the next 30 days after that. And we have a schedule for that.
Yep.
So that article would be promoted for the next 30 days. Even though another article goes out the next Tuesday, that next article would also be promoted for the next 30 days. So it does work out to 44 per week, but it's not only that one article in that week. You'll have the crossover from 4 articles in any week, so that your readership, whether it be on social media or Twitter, doesn't get bored that every single day they're being bombarded by the same article, right?
Exactly.
It's divided between 4 articles.
Yeah, you get to mix up your communications a little bit.
Exactly. And each one we do social media, we do a hashtag research, and we have a copywriter that does the copy for the social media posts. So even if you do the same article twice, it'll be a different image and different copy on it. So if the first one doesn't resonate with our reader that they see on Facebook, the one they see next week, maybe for the same article might resonate because it's a different copy and talking about a different topic within the same article.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing those steps with us. That's been super valuable. I'm sure our listeners will be loving to hear those 5 pillars. When you're working with clients on implementing this framework, what would you see as their biggest challenge to bringing it to life?
Well, there's 2 challenges that we find. One is the beginning. One is kind of as we start moving. The first challenge that we find is a lot of our clients don't know their business as well as they think they do. In order for this to work, we need to know who we're writing for, and who your business is. And by that, I mean, we need to know your client personas, which a surprising number of businesses, even if they've got to the 7-figure range, don't have their client personas written up.
Yeah.
And they don't really know what their brand represents. Are you fun? Are you business? Are you, super serious? Our writers need to know that in order to kind of portray your message when we're writing this content. We can't just be all over the place, make jokes in one with smiley face emoticons while the next one looks like a corporate paper. That is a big challenge we have. And my partner in the business is amazing at that. He usually spends a week or 2 with each new client that comes on board and helps them define that. Out of all the clients we've had, I can only think of 2 or 3 who actually had a brand guide when they came to us. We generally work with businesses in the $500,000 to about $3 million US range. And I'm still shocked that only a handful of them actually have brand guides at that size. So that's one of the big challenge at the beginning. The next challenge we find tends to be at the 3 to 6 month point, because this methodology, like a lot of marketing methodologies out there, is not a quick fix. It's not a silver bullet. It doesn't, it's not going to make you rank number 1 in Google and be all over the place in a week, in a month, maybe even in 6 months if you're in a very competitive field. It takes time. Even though we let clients know this on the first day, they sometimes get impatient. This is more of a kind of compounding interest kind of thing where, the more you do it, the more effective it gets. And a lot of people just don't give it the time it needs to start working. They quit at 6 months, which is just when it's going to start producing results. But they just haven't seen, doubling of sales in the first 6 months. So they think it's not working for them. So those are the 2 challenge points, the kind of the mid-range and when they're starting off with us.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you spoke about results there. What kind of metrics do you typically use to measure results for this type of methodology?
Sure. Generally, the results we're going for is traffic. A lot of this methodology tends to be pretty top of funnel. For example, the content we create tends to be very top of funnel stuff. So, more information about a product and industry, everything like that. We're not sales pages. We're not writing sales pages because, one, nobody's going to click on a social media post that leads you directly to a sales page. I mean, that's an ad. That's not, informational, which is what we're doing. And also when we're doing the link outreach, nobody's going to link back to a sales page, right? If you give a free, authoritative resource on how to go fishing, we have a client who is in the fishing industry, people link to that.
Yeah.
But if I say, here's a page where you can buy a fishing pole please link to it. Nobody will link to that because it's a direct sales page. So we're very, very top of funnel. So what we measure is traffic. And there's stuff we don't have control over after that, right? Their UI, UX. So I can't guarantee that after reading this article, they're going to convert. If they haven't set up remarketing on the website, which is something we definitely recommend. We've taken all that trouble. We've got them to your website. They might not be at the buy point yet, but make sure you stay in front of them. Make sure that when next time they go back to Facebook, even if they don't see the article, they're seeing your ad. Those are the cheapest kind of ads you can do, or put it on Google Ads and do retargeting there. We'll get you the traffic, the interested traffic in your industry. And then, they're the ones who have to kind of go into the conversion after that. That's not our job. It's not the conversion. So traffic is what we monitor primarily on all the social media and SEO.
Yeah, makes sense. What about for your own business when you do want to take them to the next step? How are you linking that traffic and the sales cycle?
Sure. Usually by asking for help, I would say. We just recently, and we're launching it on the website, we hired a company that was an expert in UI, UX design. I mean, like a lot of people, I thought I knew what I was doing until you work with experts. And there is a whole bunch of steps in there that you have to follow. There's copywriting that's really important. There's phrasing. There's look and feel of the website, going back to the brand guide. I will admit, until 3 years ago, we didn't have one either, and I've been running the business for 12 years. It's really important to know your customers. We had never done customer interviews. So while we had thousands and thousands of customers, I couldn't really tell you who they were. I had to guess. So that is one of the things. Once you get them, you've done the hard work of getting them to your website. Make sure you know who your paying customers are. And then make sure you have a good funnel in place to take them into your product. If you're selling a high-end product, you should have a few steps along the way, right? Because very few people are going to come to your site and cold buy a $4,000 course, for example. You need to have some other stuff in there. And I see a lot of people make that mistake where they just have their product, whatever that is, and they have no other way of people to kind of get to know who they are before buying that $4,000 product. And as a result, they lose sales. For us, the way we do it at Live Lingua, for example, we offer a free class. So there's no risk whatsoever. You sign up. We don't ask for your credit card. You just go in there. You say, I want to learn Portuguese. I want to learn Spanish. We'll pair you up with a teacher. You have a class for free. We're legitimate after that. The teacher knows what they're doing, and then you can sign up. So that's kind of our products. Could be as cheap. You buy 1 hour, it's only $15, and you can buy a few for a few hundred. So we're not on the high end of the ticket scale. And that works for us.
Yeah, perfect. Now, I can imagine that if someone's hearing this now and they've been inspired to follow your 5 pillars, they're probably thinking, okay, well, are there any special tools that you use that we might not be aware of, or any areas that we need to kind of research and get into? So are there any special tools, or what are your favorite tools that you use for things like your keyword research and also, I suppose, any part of that process?
So for the keyword research, we primarily use 2 tools, and that's the Google keyword tools, but we have a paid Google analytics account because we do paid Google ads. So we get much better data out of there. I think as of June last year, they stopped sharing full data with non-paid customers. You used to be able to go in there for free and take a look at exact search volume. Right now, if you don't pay with Google keyword tools, they'll say something from like 0 to 1,000 searches a month, which in most cases it's useless because 0 is nothing and 1,000 is great, but you have no idea. It could be 10, right? So that's one thing we can use. If you don't have access to that, we're a big fan of Keywords Anywhere, which is a Google Chrome extension. You can pay $10 and it will give you, I think, 100,000 keywords worth of data through the Google Search Console, just right there on google.com. You type it in, Spanish lessons online, in my case, and it will give you all the related keywords, all the search volume, and let you save it to a list. So those are the 2 tools we use for that. Ahrefs is what we use for a lot of our competitor and backlink research. It's kind of the go-to tool out there for that. If you already have an account at like SEMrush or Moz, stay with them. I mean, there's not a huge difference, but I personally like the Ahrefs data a little bit better. And the final tool we use, and I've been in the game for a long time, is this kind of, I think a lot of SEOs know it, but it's not very publicly known. It's something called Scrapebox. There's a lot of tools out there that do it for you online now in the cloud, and they charge you $70 a month, $100 a month, $1,000 a month. Scrapebox you can buy for $149, and it does it all for you from your own computer. It's kind of like the Swiss Army knife for online research. It can help you find emails, it can find you backlinks, all the rest of it. So we have multiple licenses of Scrapebox, and you can just buy it once and you never pay again. And it's a super powerful tool. It has a little bit of a learning curve, and it's got a very awful user interface, but great great videos on YouTube for you to learn how to do it. And once you do, it will do so many things for you, and you don't have to worry about that, monthly reoccurring costs on your marketing budget.
Yeah, fantastic. Some great tips there. Thank you for sharing. We'll definitely include some links to those in our show notes as well for anyone that's interested in following up with them. Now, how do you keep yourself current and at the forefront of the industry?
I read a lot, and podcasts and YouTube. So I make sure I spend at least 30 minutes to an hour every day trying to kind of keep up. I'm on some mailing lists. Some of the basic ones I've cleaned up my inbox recently in order to try to get the most up-to-date information. And a lot of it comes through trial and error. You shouldn't be afraid of doing it yourself, especially if you're like me, a bootstrap entrepreneur. You don't have a huge amount of resources. Try stuff. Some stuff that people swear don't work may work for you. So just go out there and give it a try. But generally, it's read the basic articles and then try it yourself.
What are your go-to sources for articles and news that you follow?
Sure. I'm on the Moz mailing list, which does a lot on the SEO front. So you go to moz.com and you can sign up free for the mailing list, and they have like the 10 best online marketing articles of the week. They come through there. Through Facebook, I sign up for SEO Roundtable and Search Engine Journal. So I kind of get that in my Facebook feed, and I do that through my news feed. I get that as well. For podcasts, I listen to a podcast called the Content Marketing Institute podcast on a pretty regular basis. There's another one called SEO on the Wire. I also listen to that every week in order to keep up on the SEO side of things. And then I just go on Google and I kind of just search for different articles every once in a while. And generally they're ordered by date for the relevant ones. And I read those. I try to spend at least once a month and put aside an afternoon to do that.
Awesome. I'm a big fan of that as well. I think it's something we've got to do to stay current in this space because, the changes are so constant. Excellent. Now, what are you most excited about for the next month?
Oh, well, let's see. In livelingua.com, we're hopefully going to have the new website up, which we've been working for the year. Also getting this list for the podcast, the business name to be determined. I'm kind of excited to try that out myself to see, to do a little bit more podcast outreach and see how effective that is. Because I actually think being a podcast guest is a very underutilized marketing tool for marketers. Now, it's a little harder if you're a marketing agency like us to convince the heads of other companies to go and do it, right? Because you as the marketing agency, you can't do it. You can't just say, go on there representing another company. You actually need somebody from that company to go on there and do it. But if you can get past that hurdle, you're essentially creating free evergreen content by being a guest on another person's podcast, right? Because somebody else is doing the work of the production. You're probably getting a backlink to your website. Most, good podcasts have their own websites. I'm surprised at how many don't, but most good podcasts have their own websites. So you're getting a link back to it. In addition to that, most podcasts are syndicated. So you're not only getting a link from the podcast website, it'll be shared on Podbean and everything else. So you're going to be getting links from all these different syndicated websites that are out there. And if you play it right, you can get in front of your audience. You should be appearing on podcasts that make sense for you, not, if I showed up on a podcast about selling on Etsy, I'd be wasting my time. I mean, there's not really my audience.
Yeah.
But if you get in front of the right audience, it can be very impactful, not only to get your name out there in front of the right people. But I'm very excited about that's the kind of project that I'm going to bed sleeping about and planning out.
Yeah.
And kind of exciting to me.
Fantastic. Well, we definitely look forward to seeing it. Thank you so much for being on the show today. It's been wonderful to have you. If people want to get in touch with you or reach out, what's the best way for them to find you?
Sure. I'm a little old school, so I'd say Facebook. You can look for Ray Blakney. Look me up in LinkedIn, also under Ray Blakney. Otherwise, you can go to any one of my businesses, livelingua.com, Infinite Upcycle, or Twidgicate, and just contact the email. The people there. It won't go directly to me, but they will pass it to me. My direct email, if you'd like, is ray@livelingua.com. That'll get straight to me.
Awesome. Thank you. We will include links to all of those, of course, in our show notes because we do have a website, I'm glad to say. So do check it out. We'll also link to all those tools and other things that you mentioned today. That's been some wonderful sharing you've done. We really appreciate it. And it was great to hear you talk through the 5 pillars so succinctly as well in a way that's really tangible for people listening. So really appreciate it. Thanks again, Ray.
Thanks, Louisa.
Thanks for listening. If you liked this episode, please remember to subscribe. My recommended action item from today's show is to look at the 5-pillar content amplification plan and apply it to your organization. Please join me in the Interactive Minds Facebook group where hundreds of marketers have discussions, answer questions, and I share the latest news I'm seeing in the industry. You can access today's show notes at interactiveminds.com/podcast. See you next week.